How confident are you that the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to make the postseason? We're discussing our feelings on it and more here in 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Dun, da, 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 da. That's not how that beat goes. Welcome into another edition of the PHNX D-Backs podcast right here on PHNX. My name is Derek Montia, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX. This man next to me is occasionally known as your Thunderstick, Jesse Friedman. And of course, we are here today talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks' final 10-game stretch leading into the MLB postseason. Of course, we are sponsored by our friends at Bet365. Go download the Bet365 app right now. Use code PHNX365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why it is never ordinary at Bet365. And of course, as you know, the Diamondbacks come off of losing 2 out of 3 to the Colorado Rockies. And as much as we want to, I guess, panic about that, the Diamondbacks are still, believe it or not, in a fairly decent spot as they enter these last 10 games of their regular season.
Yeah, I think things would be in a bit of a dark place around here if the Diamondbacks had just gotten swept by the Colorado Rockies. Definitely. That would not have been great. But yeah, I mean, that Rockies series, that was your opportunity to really create some distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that the final 10 games of the season were going to be challenging. You're going to have 4 against a very good Brewers team this weekend. You've got 3 obviously against the Padres to finish out the season. This is a tough stretch for them, and that Rockies series was an opportunity to create some margin of error. And the Diamondbacks do have, I guess, a bit of a margin of error in that they have a 2-game lead on the Atlanta Braves, but they are still tied with the Mets, who of course have the tiebreaker over them. So this is going to be a dogfight, and as we said, it's probably going to go down to the last couple of days of the season, and it's going to be fun to watch. Just as a baseball fan in general, like, this is almost as good as October in my book. These games are just so much fun to watch. But yeah, D-backs fans maybe wish there was a little bit less stress at this point in the year, and that's not going to happen.
Well, and of course, when you talk about that, yes, every game does feel like a playoff game, but every game, the Diamondbacks don't need to win every game as they come down the stretch. They would like to. We would like to see them do that, but of course, they still have a way that they can get into the postseason without necessarily doing that. The other teams that they're currently in a battle with for that final wildcard spot, or at least the final 2 wildcard spots, also have some tough games ahead, and they will be playing some tough opponents that also have postseason implications of their own. But as far as this series with the Rockies, there are some encouraging takeaways here in regards to, things we saw from the Diamondbacks. Of course, I think the biggest one was Eduardo Rodriguez's outing, right? Erod came out and absolutely shoved for this team. And as much as Jesse and I always want to start this off by saying it was the Colorado Rockies, this was a team that took 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks. And Erod and, to be fair, Merrill Kelly in game 1 of the series both went out there and looked incredible. The starting pitching has not looked incredible. So it's very encouraging to see both of those guys who missed so much time getting into the groove and finding, their ability to be dominant like they were in the past.
Yeah, he really, going back and looking at some of the numbers in more detail, he really leaned on his cutter a lot in that game. He threw 37% of his pitches were cutters, 41% were 4-seam fastballs. He threw a few sinkers in there as well. So yeah, basically Erod threw one of his fastballs in about 80% of the time in that game, which is pretty crazy. Like, I don't know if that approach is going to work against every team. You're probably going to have to feature the changeup and maybe the slider more in certain situations, but man, it was working, and he was executing those pitches extremely, extremely well. This was, again, as much as the Rockies are a subpar offensive team, and that is well documented, he was basically hitting his spots almost every single time. And it was again, it was a joy to watch. We saw a lot of Erod highlights floating around on the Twitterverse as well. I think Pitching Ninja, he got some love. And that's not normally like Erod's game, right?
Yeah.
He's a little bit more of a pitch to contact type of a guy. We'd asked some questions earlier about the lack of swing and miss that we were seeing, and he answered a lot of those questions in that game yesterday.
He did. And I mean, as much as we would like to say you can't throw the fastball that often, I think Ryan Nelson would like a word with you in regards to how often you can throw that fastball. But yeah,
Ryan Nelson's fastball is maybe in a little bit of a different place than Erod's fastball. But Erod did have, I mean, there was a little bit of giddy up yesterday. He averaged 92.3 miles per hour on his four-seamer, which is actually higher than his average from last season. So any questions relating to at least velocity with Erod, I don't think there's any concerns there at this point.
Well, of course, you also have to be very encouraged about Corbin Carroll's season. Obviously, he reached his 2020 mark with 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. He's very close to 30 stolen bases as well, and he had 2 dingers in yesterday's game. But I think, of course, the most encouraging thing is just what he's been doing against left-handed pitching.
Yeah, it's really been just a crazy turnaround. We kind of talked about it a little bit on the post-game show yesterday, but when Corbin started to come out of this funk, you were seeing some positive signs, but it was all happening against right-handed pitching. If you look at his numbers from that month of July where he really started to turn things around. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I think his OPS in July against righties was about 900. It was really, really good. But his OPS against lefties in July was 483. So he basically, and Torey Lovello accordingly, was still, either sitting him against lefties or just batting him, in the bottom third of the lineup to try to protect him as much as possible. And Torey does not have to do that anymore. I think we can safely say that Corbin Carroll now going back to August 1st. This is about a month and a half. Corbin has actually been better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. And we do have the numbers here. He is slashing 321, 390, 755, which I believe is an 1145 OPS against left-handed pitching in the span of about a month and a half. That is pretty crazy stuff.
It's incredible. Cam Demonium in the chat says his last loss to Milwaukee was with ADC behind the plate and allowing some stolen bases. Feel better with Gabby behind the plate tonight. I think that's in regards to Brandon Pfaadt making the start for the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight. I think that is something, of course, to also think about. Now that Gabriel Moreno is back, this pitching staff could improve, right? Like we know the impact of a catcher on the game of baseball. And if you don't, you could join me for another one of my 4-hour rabbit hole sessions of watching, catcher's position behind the plate and how they basically catch the ball in the strike zone, their method in which they bring it up or whatever. But I'll tell you, I mean, it does feel like Moreno being back there not only brings, what he brings to the team offensively, but what he can do for this pitching staff, how he can help improve their numbers, and yes, also catching those runners on the base path that Jose Herrera and ADC weren't able to do.
Yeah, that is, it will be interesting to see kind of the impact that Gabby's able to have on that side of the ball. We haven't seen him, I don't think, catch a base stealer just yet. Of course, there haven't been all that many attempts. We did see a couple in the first game of that Rocky series. Brenton Doyle still stole a couple of bases in that one. I think D-backs pitchers have a role to play there as well, and making sure they vary their times and whatnot, and try to be quick to the plate. But the Diamondbacks decided to stick with Jose Herrera as the backup because they viewed Jose Herrera more highly on the defensive side of the ball than they viewed Adrian Del Castillo. And we kind of suspected that this might be the case, given how much the Diamondbacks value defense in general, that despite what Del Castillo was doing with the bat and continues to do with the bat, he is homered in each of his games down in Reno since being sent down. He continues to hit. I think you feel pretty good about his future offensively, but given where the D-backs are now, the fact that whoever that backup catcher isn't going to get a ton of playing time with Gabriel Moreno around, it really does come down to the defense and how comfortable they feel with that guy, especially looking ahead to the playoffs. And no surprises really for me that came down to Herrera.
Well, speaking of the playoffs, let's take a look at our Major League Baseball standings, and we can see where the Diamondbacks currently sit. Of course, with yesterday's win, they keep pace with the Mets. They are both 84 and 68. Of Of course, the Mets do hold that tiebreaker over the D-backs. So if the playoffs did start today, those two spots would be reversed, and the Diamondbacks would be that final team in the wild card spot. Of course, we still have the Phillies, Dodgers, and Brewers up there at the top. But that is an interesting development as well, because 3 games separate those teams. And as much as we would like the Brewers to not be playing anything at this point in this 4-game series, now that they've clinched their division, that's not the case. The Brewers are going to be playing very hard down the stretch. And that also includes when I believe the Brewers play the Mets as well. So at least they have, the Diamondbacks aren't the only team that has to deal with the Brewers here, but they do have that 4-game series against the Brewers. Of course, the Padres there sit 2.5 games up in the wild card there at 87 and 66. And then down below, you have the Cubs losing yesterday and now drawing even with the Cardinals at 7 games back. Both of those teams have kind of drifted off into irrelevancy. And of course, you just have the Braves as the only team left really giving the Diamondbacks any kind of problems here when it comes to if they will make the postseason, right? I mean, the Cubs could go off, yes, but I mean, the Cubs would need everything, or the Cardinals would need everything in the world to go their way, and that's a very unlikely scenario. But the Braves could very much be a problem for the Diamondbacks. We know that the Braves are the Braves, right? And we know that they've been absolutely decimated by injuries this year. But of course, all it would take is them really having a strong finish here down the stretch to really cause some problems for the Diamondbacks. But if they do, then that also causes some problems for the Mets, since those two teams play each other. So it's fascinating to see how these next 10 games are going to shake up for the MLB postseason and where everybody is going to land. That includes who the Diamondbacks might end up playing if they make it into the postseason, and who, if they end up in that final wild card spot, who would be there in that 3rd spot as far as the division winners. It might not be the Brewers anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we should. I know people are talking about this in the chat. The Braves did just win as of like 30 seconds ago. So I guess we should maybe take that into account. They beat the Reds 15-3. So
that's not great.
Yeah, not great news there for the D-backs. And yeah, this is so far from over, right? I mean, the Diamondbacks are still in a good position for sure. But Atlanta has a real shot here, and they have the easiest schedule out of all these teams.
They do.
So you look at what the Braves are facing the rest of the way. They just finished up this series with Cincinnati. Now they are heading to Miami to play a very bad Marlins team for 3 games this weekend.
Yep.
And then next week, things are harder, a little bit more challenging. They've got 3 against the Mets and then 3 against the Royals. So they do finish off next week with a more challenging group of teams. But like, would any of us be totally surprised if the Braves just went out and swept the Marlins this weekend?
No,
not really. I mean, the Marlins are a pretty bad baseball team at this point. So this is gonna go down to the wire, as we said earlier, and it is remarkable how the Braves just continue to be in this race, even though they've lost so much to injury this season.
There's one thing on the Diamondbacks side here, Jesse, and that's divisional hate. And when I say divisional hate, I say, I know we hate the Dodgers a lot. I know we hate a lot of our NL West rivals, but that hate pales in comparison to the level of hate that is experienced between the teams in the National League East. These teams hate each other. And when I say that, I can't even capitalize the word hate enough with how much they hate each other. The Mets have 4 games against the Phillies. You mean to tell me there's nothing more the Phillies would like to do in the entire world than end the Mets season by sweeping them in that 4-game series? Hogwash. I don't believe it. I believe the Phillies are going to do everything they can to destroy the Mets in that series. And I
they
feel
still have something to play for too. Going back to what you said earlier about the Brewers trying to get one of those top spots where you don't have to play in the wild card round. Yeah, the Phillies are definitely still motivated for sure.
And then you have the fact that the Mets and the Braves hate each other so much, and then they play each other. Yeah. And one of those teams is going to want to end the other team's season. So there's a lot of baseball still to be played, and a lot of interesting, outcomes in regards to what should happen if the Diamondbacks, what happens over their next 10 games. I still feel like a 5-5 record over the next 10-game stretch is fair for the Diamondbacks. I would say that they, have some tough opponents here. They have a good chance of maybe splitting the series with Milwaukee, maybe winning the series with, against the Giants there, because they have nothing to play for left. But, then they end their season with a series against the Padres. And I have a hard time giving them that series with the way that these two teams are playing right now.
Yeah, I think one thing we can say pretty much for sure at this point, if we can actually throw the standings up there one more time. For a while, it looked like the Diamondbacks had a decent shot to actually host a wild card round game, and that is probably not going to happen, right? The Padres have a 2.5 game lead,
Yes.
in that wild card picture as of right now. And again, there's still time. Like you can make up 2.5 games in a span of 10 games, especially when the D-backs do play the Padres directly. But statistically, it is quite unlikely for the D-backs to not only find their way into the postseason, but actually end up with the best record out of all 4 of these teams, which is what would have to happen for them to actually host that game. So if you are expecting or hoping to attend a Diamondbacks wild card round where all 3 games potentially are at Chase Field, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Scott Mack in the chat says D-backs need an internal focus of control as opposed to an external focus. Do not let external forces dictate. And that's very true. They do control their own destiny. So as much as we want to sit here and talk about what's going to happen with those other teams in this race, the Diamondbacks just need to win. And that's really what they need to focus on. They also kind of need to focus on getting hot, because despite how hot they were in July and August, that has not been the case for September. So they need to figure out to get some way to get on a roll here and have that translate over into the playoffs. They need to win. They need to win their way in. They need to do it themselves. And I feel like that would be a big morale boost for this team, and I think it would be a great way to head into the postseason. But of course, we do have a couple of outcomes here in regards to the 10-game stretch, right? Like obviously, if the Diamondbacks,
you can kind of play it out.
Yeah, like if the Diamondbacks go 6-4, right? I think you feel fairly good about that. If the Diamondbacks can have a winning record over these next 10 games, but I think anything 5-5 and below that is going to put you in some sort of danger of not making the postseason.
Yeah, so if the D-backs were to go 6-4, then I guess the Braves just won, so we'll try to factor that in here. That would require Atlanta to go at least 7-2 in order to beat the Diamondbacks. And even if Atlanta did go 7-2 in that instance, the Diamondbacks could still get in by beating the Mets, right? So if the Mets were to go 5-5 while the D-backs go 6-4, then that would also,
the Braves and Mets
work.
They have a thing to deal with there.
Yeah. So 6-4 I think is pretty good. You feel pretty good about the Diamondbacks making it if they go 6-4. But at the same time, is it impossible for the Braves to go 7-2 in their last 9 games? I don't think so. I mean, with the way that they're not playing quite as well as the Padres, but I still could see a scenario where the Braves pull that off. So yeah, I mean, and if the D-backs, like if you go on more of the negative side of that, if the D-backs go 4-6, then you're in a pretty precarious spot at that point. That would, can we pull the standings up one more time? Make sure I actually get these numbers right. So the Braves are now 83-70. Okay. So they've got 9 games left. So if the D-backs go just 4-6, then the Atlanta Braves at that point would only have to go 5-4 in order to beat the Diamondbacks. And that feels like something that could very realistically happen, right? I'd almost expect the Braves to go at least 5-4 the rest of the way. So yeah, the D-backs can't just count on the other teams helping them out, right? If the D-backs are going to make the postseason, is very much in their best interest to, not just go 500 or whatever the rest of the way, but actually, kind of take over. If you can go 6-4, if you could even go 7-3, then at that point you're making it very, very difficult for any of those other teams to keep up with you.
Tyler Hall in the chat asks, do ATL and Mets have the tiebreaker? Yes, both of those teams have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks, which is unfortunate when it comes down to should they tie there at the end of the season. A lot of you in the chat have been bringing up the news today, and I don't know if it's news as much as it's just kind of more of the same in regards to the ongoing drama with Maricopa County and the Arizona Diamondbacks about Chase Field, right? Of course, news came out today that the two sides seem to be kind of far apart on a deal, and there's a lot of things that the two sides actually do see eye to eye on, but there's also like a weird blame game going on right now in regards to maintenance and upkeep. Jesse and I constantly correct each other or kind of debate, wait, who's responsible for it now? When did it change? Right? Like 2018, things changed for this team where they kind of took over Chase Field. I was at a wonderful concert last night. I don't know if I want to call it wonderful. It was very, very long, but Green Day rocked. I'll also say I'm too old to go to concerts that start at 5:30 p.m. and end after 11. I don't have the energy.
It ended after 11.
I don't know what time it ended because I just up and left after one point. I was like, I'm done. I've had all I can take. But of course, because of this deal, the Diamondbacks do get revenue from concerts like the Green Day concert that was at Chase Field last night. And that is part of the reason why the Diamondbacks are now responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of Chase Field. During these, I guess, discussions, during these negotiations, it's just talked about how rundown that building is. And it seems to be a lack of, I guess, responsibility for who is in fact responsible for the upkeep of that building. And our understanding is that transferred over from Maricopa County to the Diamondbacks. And that includes everything. That includes the fixing the roof. That includes any kind of external maintenance changes that they want. And it includes the air conditioning. So now the two sides are kind of finger pointing a bit, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate considering what this town, what this city just went through in losing the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd that at this point there should be any kind of, I guess, public squabbling the way that it is over this to cause, I guess, not to cause, intentionally bring the fan base and the people into it to kind of choose a side and try to get people on one side or another. And the whole thing kind of seems like it is spiraling a bit out of control. I know many of you in the chat are concerned about that, as are we, considering that we kind of do this for a job and we need a baseball team to be here in order to keep doing that job. But it's also because we don't want to see another one of our beloved sports teams leave, like we saw with the Coyotes, right? Now, as Leah would point out, you know, Coyotes fans are getting to watch that franchise now kind of flourish through all the years of kind of us rebuilding and being there during that process in another city. That sucks, right? And I think that is just too fresh of a wound right now for fans here in this city to deal with when we hear about these contract negotiations going on between Diamondbacks and Maricopa County over Chase.
Yeah, it's not pretty. I mean, I think the Arizona Republic published a story that had to be 4,000 words long. I felt like I ain't
reading all that. I'm sorry it happened, or congratulations.
Yeah, I sort of had the same feeling when I was reading through that. But I think just the timing, right? Like, especially with the playoffs drawing close, and there being a lot of excitement about this team overall, despite timing. Having just lost 2 out of 3 to the Rockies and whatnot. The D-backs are they've really, I don't know, I can't really say they've taken center stage in the Valley, because this is probably still a basketball town, football town at heart.
This is Marvin Harrison Jr.'s town.
This is Marvin Harrison Jr.'s town, exactly. But at the same time, the Diamondbacks have been kind of the best thing about Arizona sports, at least one of the best things about Arizona sports, certainly over the last year. And, for all of this to be coming up at this particular time is unfortunate. I think there's just a change of tone here, right? We talked to Derek Hall about this situation several months ago out at Chase Fields, and he was still using words like, we're encouraged, or we're hopeful, or
partnering trying to get stuff done.
At least publicly, it appeared that the Diamondbacks in the county were disagreeing, but maybe headed in the right direction. There was hope that something could get done before too long. And while I still think a deal is totally possible, and I'm not expecting the Diamondbacks to leave Arizona or anything, I think we're very far away from that, but the public rhetoric has changed, right? Yes. You can very clearly see if you've read some of the stuff that was written about this. I think there's another story recently before the Republic story. All of that has changed. These two sides are that this relationship is clearly very strained. And I know there's also an election that has a role in this as well, where a lot of these people. Espo? Yeah, right. Yeah, you versus Espo is causing all sorts of turmoil.
Right, obviously.
So yeah, that's a whole other layer to this, is that some of the people that are involved in these negotiations may or may not continue to be around. So there's a lot of layers to this, but yeah, this is obviously not a good day at all on that front.
RA says D-backs moved to Bisbee, and I don't hate that. We've already talked about
Bisbee Frisbees,
the Bisbee
right?
Frisbees. Yeah, we've already talked about them. We are completely on board with that. But,
Derek already has like jerseys and
logos. I've scouted the area. I know where we're going to put a parking garage. It's going to be outstanding.
And there's already a ballpark.
There's already one of the oldest ballparks. We get that age, right? We get like history already on our side. You know, forget Chase Field. But no, I understand where a lot of people are coming from, and I think Jesse's right. I think at the end of the day, this is scary rhetoric that is being used for a purpose, right? It is not by coincidence. I don't think that this is coming out right now when the Diamondbacks are in the middle of a playoff push, when there's a lot of attention around this team. It's a bit intentional, I think. And I think obviously a part of that is because, you know, they want to sway people's, you know, people on one side or another and have either the Diamondbacks or the county feel that pressure, right? So it sucks. It definitely sucks. And I think that, of course, it's the last thing that fans want right now, right? We are struggling enough when it comes to, you know, this dealing with the ups and downs of this, you know, playoff push. We don't need more. We don't need more bad news. We don't need to deal with a loss against, you know, the Rockies, and then also contemplating the loss of our baseball team. But of course, like Jesse said, there is hope, and there is some positive things coming out from Derek Hall and the Diamondbacks. Of course, we know Ken Kendrick. He's used some scary language, but he said very directly that not only do they not want to move out of the city, they don't want to move out of Maricopa County. So hopefully that's just something that can get done and that they can stay at Chase Field. Like I will say, like, aside from a few, I don't know. It's like when your friend has a house that they're like, my house sucks. And then you go over there and you're like, your house isn't that bad. Like, just put a little maintenance into it. Maybe fix the downstairs bathroom. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's things you can do to make it nicer. And I do feel like that's the case with Chase Field. And that's speaking after going to a concert last night that I was there for entirely too long. So get it figured out, guys. That's all we as fans want.
If you could get the entire population of Bisbee on like a daily basis, then I think the D-backs would still have a shot at beating the Oakland A's attendance numbers this year.
Yes. 10,000, I think, in Bisbee.
I just Googled it. They say 5,000.
Oh, yikes. We're going to need to bust some people in.
Yeah, but I guess on the positive side, probably fewer transplants from the Midwest in Bisbee.
Good
so you
point.
don't have the influx of Cubs fans.
All these people from Maryvale coming out and rooting for the Brewers, basically. We don't like that.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
Bisbee is a Diamondbacks town. So I think we can make this happen. At the very least, there has to be a minor league affiliate in Bisbee at some point. Yes. I think we can all agree with that.
We need to figure that out.
Bisbee it's at about 5,500 feet elevation. So of course you'd have the ball flying
out of that ballpark.
So we
could move Visalia there, the Rawhide.
Yeah.
And again, Bisbee Frisbees, though. You're not keeping the name. The name has to be the Frisbees. But that's non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable. Cam Demonium says, I doubt players will even notice this news right now in regards to the stadium news. Yeah, I mean, we were kind of curious about that. Like, I doubt that they do notice this kind of stuff. But it's also a distraction. So if they do hear about it, if they do read about it, if they like, I mean, the problem with players is that anything team related, they have friends, they have family members. There's people that are probably messaging them about it and being like, hey, what's going on with the stadium? You guys going to stay there? Are you leaving? What's going on? You know? And like, for the most part, yeah, they can block it out. However, it still doesn't mean that it's not a distraction at the worst possible time. And Cam Demonium says Bisbee residents would be too stoned to find the ballpark. That sounds like my kind of town. If I'm being honest, it sounds like my kind of city.
Have you been there?
No, I haven't. But we need to take a road trip to go play a baseball game in that stadium or whatever. We'll figure it out. Of course, we'll have more here in regards to our MLB power rankings and a look ahead at this upcoming 4-game series with the Brewers here momentarily. But we do have to talk about some of our partners here shortly. Of course, we thank you guys for being here on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so right now. Sign up for notifications. That way you don't miss whenever our shows go live. And of course, hit that like button. We love it when you do. Of course, at least I do. This man, again, so internally confident. It's outrageous. But of course, if you're listening on the audio podcasting side, we do like feedback. So make sure you leave us a review and make sure you subscribe on your favorite audio podcasting app. Of course, we appreciate that so much, and we love our listeners. I listen to a podcast of ours for the first time in a long time the other day. And I was like, you know what? That Derek guy's not so bad. Kind of like him. Jesse can use some work. But anyway, of course, we will, like I said, we will get to our power rankings here. But first, make sure to go check out Bet365 if you haven't done so already. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. And of course, even though we cover baseball, I will have to say that I really, really enjoy getting down on the NFL action over at Bet365, especially the live in-game betting, which Bet365 helped pioneer and does offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. So dive in the middle of the game, make a game that's already fun to watch more exciting by getting down on Bet365. If you're a new customer, you can choose between two offers when you open an account at Bet365. Just use our code of PHNX365 when you sign up. Deposit $10 and choose either between a bet and get offer where you can place a bet of $5 or more and get $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer where you can place up to $1,000 bet. And if your qualifying bet loses, you get your match refund in bonus bets. So, of course, check out Bet365 right now. They do offer some very fun early payout offers, including one on baseball, where if your team goes up by 5 runs, you win regardless of the outcome of the game. Same game parlay and parlay selections will be marked as winners as well on those. So, I don't know what you're waiting for. Find out why it is never ordinary at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use that code of PHNX365 when you sign up. Choose your offer. And again, find out why it is never ordinary over there at Bet365. Must be 21 and over or over and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Text NEXT STEP to 53342 or visit problemgambling.az.gov. Well, of course, we thank Gila River Resorts and Casinos, of course, for hosting our fantasy football draft, which I drafted.
How's your team doing?
I drafted
Derek?
a terrible team. It's an awful team. It's a really bad team. But of course, I still had a fun time doing it over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos because no one does it better. Got to check out one of their 4 Valley locations. Of course, can join us for all of our watch parties, which are so much fun. Join us for Cards and Sons watch parties all year and so much more. So stay tuned on ways to come hang out with us. But of course, even when we're not there, it's still a fun time to go to Gila River Resorts and Casinos. You can go all in with over 4,500 slots and live table games or catch all the action at any one of their sports books. You can also either get, you deserve a staycation. So you can plan a staycation there for yourself, maybe with your family, or maybe, again, just by yourself. It's a good way to spend your time. Also, check out their pool. Like I said, it's cooling off here in the Valley, but it's never really not pool weather here at any time. So grab yourself a pina colada and you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playathila.com for more details. Well, of course, it is that time to take a look at MLB power rankings. Of course, as the season winds down, I mean, obviously, we're getting to more of a definitive list of who the best teams in Major League Baseball were this regular season. So let's take a look at our power rankings for this week. Of course, we still have the Phillies up there at number 1. We have the New York Yankees who swap spots, get up there to the 2nd spot. They were in 3rd last week. Huge jump by the Brewers there, moving up 3 spots from 6th to 3rd. Then we have the Padres there at number 4, the Dodgers at 5. Of course, then in the bottom half, we have the Guardians at 6, the New York Mets at 7, the Houston Astros at 8, your Arizona Diamondbacks down at 9, and then the Baltimore Orioles. What a fall from grace for those guys, rounding up the top 10 there with the final spot.
Yeah, no team fell more in this week's power rankings than the Diamondbacks did.
Yeah, I was trying not to address that, but yeah, no, that's absolutely the case. Rightfully so, though. I don't feel like this was an attack on them. I just feel like, of course, the Diamondbacks had an opportunity to go out there and get the job done against a team, especially in the Rockies, that had nothing to play for, right? And I say that, and that's not really that doesn't do justice to the Rockies roster, because obviously every single one of those guys has something to play for, and that goes beyond pride and beating another team. I mean, legitimately, they're trying to secure a spot in the Rockies roster. Beyond that, they're trying to be a guy that franchise builds around in the future and becomes part of what they're trying to rebuild there in Colorado. But I don't think that makes any excuse for why the Diamondbacks, who are in the middle of a playoff race, couldn't go into Colorado and take 2 out of 3, especially that first game that seems so winnable. Like,
the Rockies, the first game is the one that got away.
Yeah, the Rockies beat the brakes off the Diamondbacks in game 2, and that's going to happen every once in a while, even against a bad team. But to lose the series, that's not something the Diamondbacks have done very often since July.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these teams are pretty closely clustered together. Like the Diamondbacks falling from 4 to 9, I don't think means, that the sky is falling
Oh, it
or
does,
that they're
Jesse.
way worse than all these other teams. Like the Diamondbacks are ninth and the Brewers are third, but I don't view the Diamondbacks as being all that much worse than the Brewers, even though they're 6 spots different, right?
Sure.
It's just kind of the nature of Major League Baseball this year, where a lot of these teams are kind of clustered together. You haven't had that separation on the top end that we're used to seeing. But yeah, I mean, touching on some of the other teams here, the Padres going up to 4, that felt necessary. You could argue we could have even put the Padres higher than the Brewers with how hot they are right now. They just took 5 out of their last 6 games here over the past week. They took 2 out of 3 at home against the Astros after sweeping the Giants on the road before that. The other thing, going back to what I was talking about earlier with Diamondbacks, their chances of hosting a wild card round not looking great. The Padres play the Chicago White Sox this weekend at home. And I don't think there's a more likely 3-game sweep than the Padres playing the White Sox at home. So you're looking at the Padres probably getting up to 90 wins this weekend. And then at that point, they've got 3 against the Dodgers and 3 against the D-backs. So 2 tough series to finish out. But it's still not all that hard to see the Padres finding a way to get 2 or 3 wins next week as well. And at that point, you're talking about a 92 or 93 win team. Even if you're bullish on the D-backs the rest of the way, getting up to 92 or 93 wins is going to be really tough for them. I mean, 93, they'd have to go 9-1. 92, they'd have to go 8-2. So I think catching the Padres at this point is going to be really difficult. Not impossible, especially because of that 3-game series at the end, but really difficult for sure.
If the Diamondbacks fail to make the postseason, they're going to look back at these last 4 series that they've played recently, and really see where they lost some games, because they didn't just lose the series to the Rockies. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Brewers at home. They did sweep the Rangers in their 2 games against Texas, but then
they could have used a couple more games against the Rangers.
Yeah, give us a 4-game series against the Rangers, please. They also lost 2 out of 3 prior to that to the Astros. So this has been a tough stretch for them in September. They are 8-8 this month, and it just doesn't really look like the Diamondbacks right now are a team that, should they get in the postseason, could really, I guess, compete with some of these other teams that are playing well right now. But that's just the way the Diamondbacks have played over the last 10 days, right?
Yeah.
Things in baseball change so quickly that suddenly after last night's win, the Diamondbacks could go on a roll. And then next thing you know, we're talking about, how crazy it was that we were even suggesting they wouldn't make the playoffs, right? It's mostly about, though, baseball being one of those games where it's about how you are playing right now over this stretch. And right now, in the month of September, they've cooled off. They're not playing the way they did over the last 2 months. So I feel like, they can still catch some fire here, but it's going to be difficult for them, like Jesse said, to even, kind of come close potentially to that spot where they will get the top wild card spot and host a playoff series. Luckily, though, the Diamondbacks have been good on the road, so I'm not that concerned with them playing a series on the road. I just think that Torey Lovullo has mentioned that was their goal. Their goal was to play a playoff series and at home here to start the wild card round. So that is looking less and less like it's going to happen, or like the Diamondbacks are going to even have a home field advantage at all throughout the playoffs. But of course, things could change in the next 10 days.
Yeah, I still think that the Diamondbacks, if they find a way to get in, are a formidable team that you probably would not want to face in a postseason series.
Yeah.
Despite what we've seen recently, this is still the best offense in baseball. I think you can pretty confidently say that. They've scored far and away the most runs in the league. And beyond that, the top end talent, the depth pitching wise is not great, but the top end talent pitching wise still hasn't been great at times, but you can see that group kind of rising to the occasion in the postseason, right? And we're already seeing Zac Gallen look better. We're seeing Merrill Kelly look better. Eduardo Rodriguez yesterday, of course, as well. If you can get 3 starters, maybe they get a 4th one. Maybe Brandon Pfaadt is able to kind of turn things around. Ryan Nelson, of course, the D-backs are hoping to get him back before the end of the regular season. I think that's possible. If you have 4 decent starting pitchers who can get on a nice run, as well as a bullpen where you've got 3 or 4 high leverage arms who can get on a nice run, then you can be a really good playoff team with the offense that the Diamondbacks have.
That's key.
The other thing I'll say real quick is that, and I think we touched on this briefly the other day, is that the Diamondbacks did not finish last season well. They lost their last 4 games in a row. They lost 6 out of their last 9. It wasn't like, oh, the D-backs go, 17 and 7 in September. And then, of course, they went on this crazy run in October.
Yep.
No, I mean, they played pretty well in the beginning part of September. I mean, they won
against
6 out of
Cubs.
7 against. Yeah, they destroyed the Cubs.
They destroyed the Cubs.
But outside of that, they didn't play all that well in the month of September, and especially down the stretch, right? So if you can find a way to get in, I still think the Diamondbacks are a formidable team once they get there.
Monty back in the chat says, how much does Nelson mean to the D-backs pitching? A lot. And I mean, not only does he mean a lot, I think, as a starter, but he could absolutely be a secret weapon as, like, I don't even want to say a long reliever, but again, like if Torrey wants to mastermind some sort of, Frankenstein monster of, putting Brandon Pfaadt and Ryan Nelson together in a game and having them eat up, I guess a couple of times through the rotation, like that might not be the worst thing in the world. It might be a very, very good move for the Diamondbacks. I just think he has been their best starting pitcher over the last like 2.5 months. And I mean, they're really missing him right now. And of course, it would be great to see him in the starting rotation. Hopefully they still get him back before the end of the regular season, and we'll have him for the postseason run should that come.
The Dodgers, just speaking on postseason rotations, I'm not exactly sure what the Dodgers are doing there. That's why I moved them down a couple of spots in our power rankings. They're at number 5. We actually have the Padres higher than the Dodgers. But yeah, it's just because I look at this rotation and I just don't really know what October looks like for this group. I mean, you have Jack Flaherty, who's been very good for them. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is back now and has looked pretty good. But beyond those two guys, Walker Buehler, I think, is an option, but he has an ERA over 5. He has not pitched well. I think they just sent Bobby Miller down, if I'm not mistaken. And Tyler Glasnow, Gavin Stone have both been effectively ruled out for the year. So
didn't Bobby Miller have the highest ERA for like qualified starting pitchers or something like that?
I don't know if he would be qualifying at this point.
I think it was 70 plus innings pitched. Or
okay, yeah,
like
maybe
that.
70 plus innings.
Yeah.
They demoted Bobby Miller, which is a crazy. I mean, Bobby Miller is one of the best young pitchers in the game last year. I thought he was going to be really good for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how things have worked out. The Tyler Glasnow, acquiring him looked like such a great move for the Dodgers, and now you're looking at Ryan Pepio with the Tampa Bay Rays, who had like 12 strikeouts in 7 innings or something the other day.
Yeah.
And it's like, the Dodgers could really use Ryan Pepio right now. Maybe he's a little bit less injury prone than someone like Glasnow.
Well, I will say that we brought that up the other day, and it just doesn't seem so crazy anymore to kind of say, I kind of want the Dodgers in the first round. Like with that. And again, I know the Diamondbacks did what they did in the postseason last year, and I know they did it against the Brewers, but you would be the first to say that this is almost a completely different Brewers team, a much better Brewers team than the one they faced last year. And I mean, the Dodgers, like you said, you just kind of look at where they're at right now, and you don't feel as confident about them being this dominant team. They've like injuries and things like that pile up, and that's the reason why teams like the Dodgers and the Braves aren't nearly as good as they should have been this year. But that's also a reason why the Diamondbacks struggled so mightily in April and June, or April and May. So I mean, this is a team, of course, that I do feel like can do what they did last year. I feel like the Diamondbacks can get into the postseason and make some noise, right? So that's all they have to do to get there. But you would like to see them not have to kind of back their way in like they did last year. You would like to see them do it a little bit, just where you get on a little bit of a roll, rather than relying on losses to teams that are in the same race as you in order for you to get your way in.
Yeah, the level of competition there is significantly higher this year, right? You're not getting in with 80. However this thing ends, 84 wins is not going to be enough. I'm just going to say that right now. The
85 probably ain't going to cut it either.
85 is probably not going to cut it. 86 is probably not going to cut it. I mean, we were talking earlier. Yeah, we were talking about how 6-4 would maybe be where you start to feel pretty good about the D-backs chances. And even then it's not a guarantee, but 6-4 lands you at 90 wins for the season. I think that's pretty much where you're going to have to be to really feel comfortable here. And yeah, that is just so different from last season, right? And also odd in that the American League race is actually not that way. I think in the
Yeah,
American League, you might be able to get in with 85, maybe 86 this season.
which is odd considering that's usually not the case for the American
Yeah.
League, right? So
Yeah. The narrative of the National League being the weaker of the two is just not it's just not true anymore.
no,
The standings say otherwise.
nope. Well, of course, we do have that big 4-game series with the Brewers, which we will preview here in a moment. But first, we got to talk about Sanderson Ford. Sanderson Ford, we are proud to have Sanderson Ford as our vehicle sponsor, our vehicle partner here at PHNX. And of course, that's because Sanderson Ford is an amazing company that, of course, puts customer service as a priority to you. They thrive on a no hassle, no pressure, and no nonsense sales approach. They're just going to help you find the vehicle that you're looking for. And of course, they give back and support so many of our local charities and, of course, partners that we like to also donate to as well. St. Mary's Food Bank, Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center, Military Assistance Mission, Special Olympics Arizona, and so much more. So that's why Sanderson Ford, who has been a family-owned and operated car dealership through 3 generations, is a proud part of the Valley here. And of course, they also want to give you the best deals that they can. They are pushing for the playoffs, just like the Diamondbacks right now. And you get the payoffs like deals on the 24 Ford Bronco Sport Big Ben, just ranked highest in quality in its segment by JD Power. You can also get 0% financing for 36 months with no payments for 90 days on the Ford F-150, Escape, Edge, Explorer, and Expedition. So check out the Sanderson Ford Summer Sales event right now. It is here, and they're teaming up with the Boys of Summer for a final playoff payoff sale. If you purchase or lease any new Ford, you will get 4 tickets for your family to see the D-backs push for the playoffs. You'll also get 0% for 36 months OAC from Ford Credit. See dealer for details. And of course, I don't care how much we want to sit here and maybe talk about the Diamondbacks not making it into the postseason, because we believe they're going to do that. Why? Because the Diamondbacks' future is bright. So bright that we all need new pairs of Shady Rays around here, because that's how bright the future is. Maybe also that bright for the Cardinals and the Suns, maybe just Valley sports in general. Have you seen ASU not losing games? I'm just saying. So make sure to go out and get yourself a brand new pair of Shady Rays so you are covered for all the seasons. And of course, Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that we love to work with because they offer a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And of course, they do not cost nearly the amount as some of their competitors. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. And of course, got to check out their Color Rush lenses right now. Color Rush lenses are amazing. They are vibrant. And of course, not only are they polarized to protect your eyes from the sun, but they also just give you an amazing view through those lenses. So check out Shady Rays. Of course, if they ever go missing, we've talked about it. You don't have to sweat it at all. They have a lost and broken replacement plan, which will send you out a brand new pair. No guilt, no questions asked, should you break or lose your Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head over to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself once again. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, Jesse. Well, let's take a look at this Milwaukee Brewers team, which we just saw in person not too long ago. But let's take a look at where they're at now. They've only gotten better since the last time we saw them. They are 88-64 with a plus 135 run differential. They are 6-4 in their last 10, thanks to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their team OPS is at 735, which is tied for 10th in all of Major League Baseball. They have a starting pitching ERA of 4.02, which is about the middle of the pack there at 16th. But of course, their bullpen is incredible. 3.17 ERA, which is good for 2nd in all of Major League Baseball. And then defensively, they have 27 outs above average, which is 4th just behind the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, it feels like just yesterday that we were talking about playing the Brewers, and it wasn't yesterday, but it wasn't that much before yesterday. The Brewers, since the Diamondbacks last saw them, they just took 2 out of 3 from the Philadelphia Phillies. They're kind of riding high after clinching the NL Central Division. Of course, they've had a pretty substantial lead there for a while. So, Yeah, we have this team ranked third for a reason, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've been so skeptical of the Brewers basically the entire season. And in some ways, I still don't really understand how their starting rotation is getting the results that it is. As we said last time, they have outperformed their peripherals by a pretty wide margin. The Diamondbacks have done the opposite. But you got to give credit where credit's due. And the Brewers are a very good team. They are 24 games over 500. Plus 135. Like this has not been a fluke. And Jackson Churrio's a superstar, and you probably shouldn't walk the batter ahead of him in order to face him.
Remember that this time.
Yeah. Maybe the D-backs won't try that this time around. So it should be just another big challenge for the Diamondbacks, right? And of course, this time it's on the road.
Elise says, hopefully everyone but Churrio is nice and hungover today. Of course, Jackson Churrio, below the legal drinking age of 21.
Yeah, he is. He's 20.
But I will say this, based on my experience, when you get sprayed with champagne in the clubhouse, it still somehow like seeps in. I don't know how to explain it other than just like soaked in through my skin, and I still felt the effects.
Was feeling a bit of a buzz.
You were,
during
aren't
the
you?
D-back
Yeah, see, I know it. And I
year,
mean, he stays away from it. He's smart. I was all up in the mix with my camera.
You just felt like I was just inhaling it at that point. There was just so much of it.
You do inhale it. That's for sure. But.
I mean, the other thing here real quick is that the last time the Diamondbacks were in Milwaukee, that's what happened. They were popping bottles, right? That's the last time the Diamondbacks faced the Brewers on the road
in Milwaukee.
And you wonder if maybe the Brewers are playing, maybe they have that in the back of their minds a little bit, knowing what the D-backs did to them on their home turf last year. It was obviously a really rough couple of days for them to just a quick 2-game sweep. It felt like the series was over, in a day, because it basically was, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see how the Diamondbacks approach this, and if I don't know if maybe things get emotional, maybe a little chippy over the course of the weekend. I'm not really expecting that, but who knows?
It's not how we play the game. We play the game the right way over here. You know that.
Right, exactly.
But I will say that maybe, that locker room, maybe that inspires a little bit of good memories. Maybe being in there and remembering what they celebrated in that room will help them cross that finish line. There's also they
don't have Evan Longoria to make like unbelievable plays at third base.
It's true,
though,
but you have me, and I will take my shirt off after drinking a whole bottle of champagne. So that's well documented.
Yeah,
I'm still allowed to do that, right? I'm not allowed to say the F word anymore, but I can still drink a whole bottle of champagne. No one's going to take that from me. I won't host the show anymore if you go tell me I can't drink a whole bottle of champagne after the Diamondbacks make the World Series. But of course, there is some challenges in regards to facing the Brewers this often in a 4-game span.
Yeah.
Or not in a 4-game span. In what is it, like a 12-day span? You got 7 games over that span. It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, the series with the Brewers just ended on Sunday, right? I mean, that was 4 days ago. So, yeah, it's always a little hard for me to really pinpoint like who has the advantage, who has the disadvantage in these situations. Yeah. Players generally describe it as like there's both pros and cons to seeing the same team in such a small stretch. I think numbers wise, the more that you see pitchers, the more vulnerable those pitchers get. So I think that this would probably favor hitters, that getting to see some of these same guys again in such a short span of time.
Well, and the Diamondbacks have kind of had some changes, right? They've had some roster changes. They got some guys back. So I mean, in regards to the players returning from injury and who the Brewers are going to see, they have a little bit less information, I guess, than the Diamondbacks do on who they're going to see on Milwaukee's side. So
we might, I definitely thought it was possible Lourdes Gurriel Jr. would be activated today. It doesn't look like we've gotten any news on that front yet, which makes me feel like maybe that's not happening, at least not for today. Not for today.
Yeah, but it could still happen throughout the course of the series.
Yeah, it could still happen during the series. Torrey said in Colorado while I was there that he was. He definitely believed that getting Lourdes back on this road trip was possible. So, probably get some updates there before too long.
We do have a look here at the probable pitchers, though, for this upcoming series against the Brewers. And, of course, Diamondbacks have Brandon Pfaadt, Zac Gallen, and Merrill Kelly all in this one, including and also Jordan Montgomery. They're starting in the final game there. Brewers have not made an announcement for Game 2, but they do have Tobias Myers going in Game 1 against Brandon Pfaadt tonight. Then Aaron Savali in Game 3 against Merrill Kelly. and they'll round out the series with Frankie Montas there in the final game.
Yeah, Frankie Montas has been kind of an under the radar move at the trade deadline. He's been pretty good for the Brewers. And it just the Brewers just have this pitching apparatus, I guess, that just seems to get the most out of guys one way or another. Montas, since coming over in that trade, has a 3.55 ERA in 9 starts. So he's been really, really good, far and away, better than he was in Cincinnati earlier in the season. So yeah, D-backs seeing Tobias Myers again tonight. Of course, that's a guy that they did see in the last series. They did not, however, see Aaron Savali or Frankie Montas. So those guys are different. I think it is pretty likely that we'll see DL Hall pitch
Game 2.
In game 2. That's listed as TBD right now. But
I wouldn't be surprised if they go with a bullpen game of some kind, just considering how bad the Diamondbacks are in bullpen games.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And also DL Hall really struggled against the D-backs the last time around, right?
We want him again for sure.
That was that crazy Sunday game where they were up 5-0, and then they were not up 5-0. But they still won the game when all was said and done. It was a pretty wild one. I do have a couple notes on Brandon Pfaadt that I want to touch on real quick. I talked to Brent Strom about a variety of things in Colorado. And Pfaadt and kind of his recent struggles was one of those things. One of the points that Stromy made was getting Pfaadt to rely on his curveball a little bit more. So that's something that I'll be curious to see tonight, especially against lefties. Stromy was talking about how the sweeper is maybe not quite as effective of a pitch against lefties as it is righties, which certainly makes sense. It's more of a horizontal moving pitch than more of a 2-plane slider. Hence why we call it a sweeper instead of a slider. So that'll be interesting to see. How does Brandon Pfaadt attack left-handed hitters in particular? That's been kind of a struggle for him, not only in this recent stretch, but sort of the whole season. His splits have been really dramatic. So yeah, we might see the curveball used a little bit more, maybe even as an out pitch in certain situations. So that's something to keep an eye on tonight.
Well, of course, we will be back with another post-game show tomorrow night. But between now and then, we got 2 games, so we'll be covering both of those games. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter. Hope to see you guys tomorrow night. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter. I'm at Cap_Kman with a K. This man next to me is at Jesse N. Friedman. I got it this time. It's Kevin is on the 1s and 2s, and Kevin is at Kevin Tom Writes. What's Kev Tom?
No,
it's
Kev
Tom.
Kev.
Kev Tom writes.
Kev
Thom writes, but he writes, but we also care about his rights, right? But it's WRITES for his Twitter handle. I'm still not going to get it. It's still not. It's still a mess. But I mean, this is just. One week.
To be fair, Kevin's not really doing you any favors there, right?
I don't think so.
Kev Thomas writes. I mean,
it's not. It's got Kev Thomas.
I didn't
Kev
have
Tom.
a lot to work with. If we're being honest.
Kev Tom.
Yeah,
see, even you got it wrong.
Oh yeah, now I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, no, this is crazy.
But yeah, now it's got to be Kev Tom produces.
Yeah, we're going to change it.
Now it's
we're
lengthy and it's a whole thing. We're going to workshop it. We'll get it going.
We'll get it. We'll get this ironed out. We got just 10 more days before the postseason.
We could do we could take a Jacob Franklin approach where Jacob Franklin is Jacob_Franklin 4 because he's the 4th best.
Not anymore.
Franklin.
Remember,
Absolutely
I gave him as a present,
not.
as a going away present. I gave him Jacob_Franklin 1, but he doesn't use it.
Yeah,
he
I was going to say his Twitter account says otherwise.
I still own it, so I'm just going to say some crazy things from it and blame it on Jacob. But
I guess if you tried to do that, Kevin, though, Kevin_Thomas.
I would have to go like Kevin_Thomas 1,595.
Yeah, there's a few Kevin Thomas. Although Jacob Franklin, that's a pretty common name too, right? He was able to get number 4.
He's the 4th best Jacob Franklin. I mean, he earned that title. Tanner says, "Is it X or Twitter?" It will never be X to us, Tanner. It will always be Twitter. I'm just telling you that right now. I don't care until the day I die. Oh my God! And now we got to look at what you did. Say his name and he appears. It is Jacob Franklin.
Do you remember the gift that you gave me on the last day?
Yeah, that's why I was telling him that. Yeah.
You never gave me the Twitter.
Right. Yeah. I was just telling you. I was telling you I got it, but I never gave you. Yeah. No, I mean, we'll figure that out. Maybe I don't know. I mean, you kind of dropped back down. You weren't the number 1 Jacob Franklin. This is awkward. For you to be out here asking me why I didn't give it to you in the first place. But
don't you have like streaming channels to be fiddling with?
There's reasons I'm here, but
get out of here. Scram. Anyway. Fosh, we missed
Are we
him
in
so
trouble?
much.
Is that what Jacob
I don't
just
know.
implied? I
Like,
think he did.
Yeah,
He said he's here for a reason.
When we got
I
here
don't know.
today, he said he's always here and he's always watching, and I don't like that at all. That was very creepy, but of course, we thank him for being here. We thank you guys more for being here. Of course, we appreciate your time. Make sure to join us tomorrow night. Of course, you can follow our show at PHNX_DBacks, but all roads do lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
I don't think Eric's not going to be too happy with you if you don't shout out Southwest Bias before the end of the show.
Shout out what?
Southwest Bias.
What's that? I'm not familiar with that.
You know,
show.
that's a good point. Yeah, I don't even know what I'm saying.
Free ads.
Yeah.
No free ads. No free ads. That's definitely something we do around here. But of course, we thank you guys all for your time. We will see you again tomorrow night. And in the meantime, have a wonderful afternoon. Hope the Diamondbacks have a wonderful evening. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it is so much more fun when you go 6-4 over your last 10 and win your way into the postseason.
We all silly like the mayor.